Good morning. We're down here today and it's overcast, and I think the lighting and all is really good here on the property. So hopefully you enjoy the scenery behind me. It is real. As you can see, leaves are still falling. It's what, in November? So we are really pleased to be able to have this property come down to. If I was just quiet, you could hear the wind going through the leaves. I'm going to learn what these different birds are. I haven't, I can't tell you all of them, but I know a woodpecker, and we have some of those and owls and things like that a lot of times. So, but anyway, today what we're going to talk about is my biological father. I want to kind of go through my experience, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's most of it is not too positive, but it is what it is. So growing up with my father, he was 19 when I was born. My mother was 16. They were just he actually graduated, I think, the same, just within a week or two of me being born. So that's fine and dandy. So from what I remember, and the word and everything that was told to me around me, some of it is going to be just from what family told me as a child, and then when I start remembering, I didn't really remember much as a child until I got around 5 or 6, and it was nothing good. It just, I felt like I was born into hell. Um, and because a lot of it, the behavior of my father, my mother took out her anger on me, being the only child till my sister was born when I was 6 years old. And then I was told that they always wished I was a girl, and it's like didn't even exist after that. So there's a lot of different emotions. I don't blame my sister, you know, it is what it is. It's like you just learn to accept things through life. You don't have any control of it. But a lot of people, I realize, have a lot of anger from these things. That's why I'm going to explain to you from my perspective growing up with my father and how I look at it through the years, and as well as how I look at it today. I know for a fact that I really wanted a connection with my father. I wanted a connection with my mother. But we're going to talk about the father. So I know for a fact that around one, I actually got really sick. I was probably about 1 to 1.5, maybe less than one. But anyway, I had to wind up going to the hospital. I was actually losing weight. I was born at 6 pounds, and I was actually losing weight. From that, I wasn't holding stuff down. It's pretty much a genetic thing, I believe. But from what I understand from various sources, that neither one of my parents were even there to take care of me. My grandmothers realized what was going on, and they got me to the hospital, and they took care of me afterwards. So once I started hearing all these stories, I'm like, well, this dysfunction didn't start just at 5 or 6 years old when I started to remember. It was already happening. So, and I remember spending a lot of time over at my grandmother's house growing up. And this is my grandmother Cox. So it's my father's mother. She was a good person, good Christian woman, and always had, she was really the only positive influence in my life. But she was also in a narcissistic marriage with my grandfather, which is my dad's father. So we got a narcissism bloodline there going on. Bottom line is, when I got to be 5, 6 years old, my father, I don't ever remember through my whole childhood, I don't ever remember me and my father ever going off and doing something one on one, ever. And I was sitting there trying to remember anything. I'm like, am I blocking it out, or is it just literally that way? And that made me almost needy. I'm like, I'm craving, let's go fishing, let's go hunting. No, I don't like that. I don't like that. He didn't have any hobbies. So growing up through the years, I wound up when I moved out into my grandmother's at 16 years old. And I'm just doing fast forward because my father was basically never around. My parents divorced when I was 12. Once the fourth sibling, my youngest brother, was born, Richard, which is now passed away, as you know, that I told you on some of the other videos that he drank himself to death at 29 years old. And that's a story, the whole story in itself, about how my father went and bought him a bar after I learned that he was already, and I learned all this after the fact, that my brother was already an alcoholic. And I never knew because they lived out of state at the time. But this is, I'm just giving you some samples of my father and how he does things. But he went and he would spend, so even in high school, so I'm like, I don't really have a whole lot to say between growing up to 16 years old, because that's when I moved out. I went and bought a 56 Chevrolet Bel Air for $500 and drove it home. It had a 265 V8 in it, and I just was so thrilled to get this car because I was going to restore it, and I was going to work on this with my father, right? And I was so happy for him to see it. He didn't want to go look at it with me, but when I got it back, he did nothing but berate me. How could you buy a piece of crap like that and just everything? And I'm sitting, I looking back, and I'm like, I'm sitting here trying to buy something that we can work on together, and this is 19. Keep in mind, paid $500 for it. It was in 1980, 1981, something like that. And he just berated me up and down. And did I overpay for it? I don't know, but that was not the point. If I did, it wasn't by much. It was only $500, and I drove it, I think, 60 miles home. So the fact that it drove that far home says that it was pretty decent. All the drivetrain, transmission um, was very good in it. So, but what I didn't understand is, why did he berate me so much? Well, of course, he didn't really work on it with me, and I started doing a little bit and I enjoyed it, but I realized that he always worked around cars, but he really didn't know as much as I thought he did. He knew a little bit about engines, but not as far as restoring or doing a car, because he never really had um, any type of real goals. But this is the interesting thing. About that same time, a friend of his had a drag car. We used, we well, we went to drag races with them. It was not a one-on-one thing, but I did go to a couple of drag races, and one of them, he was there with his buddy. But see, he always had his buddies he's hanging around. It was not just me and him. He always had to have his buddies, but I could tag along. So that's totally different dynamics. But one of the drag cars caught, his buddy's drag car caught fire. So what was interesting, I got these people around here. They're just so nice. They make them over here talk to me. So, but he had a drag car that caught on fire. So it just burnt the wiring under the hood and things of that nature. My father volunteered to fix that for his buddy. So they brought the track car over there, moved my car out of the way, put the drag car there, and he worked on the drag car, fixed it, but wouldn't help me on my car. Just stuff like that. In high school, he would actually hang around his buddies, but and go drinking. Well, I was never much of a drinker. I didn't drink. I didn't fall in line with what he did and the things that he wanted to do. So, believe it or not, I realized he was hanging around with a crowd, and one of the guys actually went to my high school. He was a grade above me. When I was in 11th grade, he was hanging out Friday and Saturday nights with another kid from my school, another kid from my school that was what? He must have been 18. And back then, I think, you could probably drink at 18. I don't remember, but they would go off and drink and party. And I'm like, I realized that me and my father, we're just totally different people. And I realize that more today than ever before, because I didn't understand the narcissism of it. But my father, they wound up divorcing when I was 12. And the reason is my brother had just been born, and they came home. And I was there when it happened. And my mother, I guess there was some proof that he had been out with someone else while she was giving birth to my fourth the fourth child, my youngest brother, and I was there. I'm just like, I didn't totally understand the dynamics of what happened until I got a little older, but she found stuff in the car that confirmed that he'd been out, and I guess she confronted him, but he'd always run around on her the whole time he was married. I can see that now, and I talked to some of his buddies through the year, and they only confirmed it. So my father was never a loyal husband to my mother. Well, does she have a good reason to be angry? Yes. And she also had an abusive father. So I get that. But it never gives you the right in order to abuse your own children. This is where a lot of people don't understand. They just go through life dealing in the easiest path of least resistance. That's definitely my father, path of least resistance. And what happens is you don't wind up developing. So let's pick up at 16 years old. He fixes that other car. It wasn't long after that I lost interest in even working on the car, and I sold it. And so I sold the 56 Chevrolet. And it just, I, I'm just feeling lost. And about this time, I graduated high school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I had been working and saving for a year or two, and actually wound up having enough money to pay for my college. And that's when I'd registered, and then my mother wound up beating me out of my college money. That's a long story in itself. And we're talking about my father today, but that's a whole nother story in itself. And then laughed at me about the fact I even wanted to go to college. It's just the whole toxic dynamics was just, looking back, I'm just like, it's so freaky. It's so weird. It's so, I'm like, no wonder I was so mixed up. And this is where my, I didn't realize my siblings were being hurt as much as I was probably, but just they chose to stay at a lower consciousness level, whereas I tried to make reason with it, trying to figure out where was the actual problem. So after that, um, I wound up uh, deciding to still go to college. I had to take 9 courses. During this time, my father, mother, they never said, "Hey, let me help you pay for college" or anything. Nobody's supporting me. Nobody was there. So I wound up joining the military a little while later in the reserves to help me pay for college. Long story short, I got at 29 years old, I decided to, on my senior year of college, to back out, and I'm going to start. Now I'm going to get into real estate. This is when I got my real estate license in 1994. And I got a video on my first day in real estate too that's in here, and that's interesting. But I got into real estate and started doing excellent at it. Nobody was around to say, "Hey, good job." Up to this time, me and my father, we passed, but we really didn't really do anything. We might go out to eat once in a while. If we ever did anything, it was to go out and the Sizzler or someplace and get something to eat. But it was never a deep conversation. It was never, "Hey, how you doing in college? I hope you're doing well." What I realized, and this goes from both of my parents, but we're focusing on my father, not one time did they have an encouraging word, complimentary word, or anything. And I just thought that inadequacy was always with me. I just thought it was me and didn't realize how much it had been chipping at my soul through the years. So when I got into real estate and did so well, I noticed he treated me a little different. It was kind of weird. Um, then I was in some toxic relationships, one thing after the other. Bottom line is I skipped the first toxic marriage, but that's another video in itself. So I was dating somebody, it was extremely toxic. Um, and I was crashing, and I just reached out trying to get some support. And I couldn't get support from either parent to say, "Hey, you're going to be okay." And we attract what we are, not what we want. I didn't understand that at the time. I understand it today, and I understand why everybody around me was toxic. So when I started crashing and didn't understand what balance was of mind, body, and spirit. And that's what it was. That my spirit had been broken over and over. That's where the real problem is the mind operates from the spirit. So what happens with a therapist today is they do a lot of mind and body work, but they don't really get involved in the spirit. And that's what I told you in another video about when I went to my 7th therapist, when she hugged me and told me everything was going to be okay, and it just filled my soul. And I'm like, wow, I haven't felt that before. I'm like, that's where my problem is. But that's what started the dynamics of me getting out after 12 years of Dark Night of the Soul. So what happened was by 35 years old, I was a millionaire, but all the people in my life were absolutely toxic. And I didn't realize I never had anybody, and this is way before YouTube and any of this. And today you can find all these answers out there if you go looking. And what I've wanted to do on this channel is go directly to the source of, instead of having to listen to a bunch of them, I try to make sure we're focused on one dynamics at a time to help you get to a certain place where you can start growing. Because until you understand where you are and where you need to go, you're kind of in a law. You're like, I don't know what I need to do right now. So what I'm helping you here is helping you understand what steps to take next. But let me finish this before this gets too long. So when I was a millionaire, here I am at 35. I planned this trip to Destin, Florida, and I invited all my family. I wanted to try to bring this family together. This is before I knew about narcissism, so I tried to bring them all together. Well, my father, my brother Michael, and my sister, and her boyfriend at the time, which later became her husband, which she's now divorced, but that's another story. Um, this is in 1999, I believe. We all go down to Destin, Florida, and go on this fishing trip. I thought, well, this is a time for me and my father to bond, right? He never wanted to go fishing before, but they narcissists like the groups. So he came down, and we went on an all-day trip, and I think I paid for it. I don't remember the details, but I think I did. But we're out in the boat. This is an all-day trip. We leave early in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock. It wasn't 10 or 11 o'clock. And we're not going to get back in until probably 5 or 6 o'clock. It's an all-day trip. We go way out and catch the big grouper and the red snapper. And it was probably 10 or 11 o'clock. He did, he fished a little bit. And then next thing I know, he's in there sitting inside, I think they call it the galley or the kitchen area, and sitting at a table, not fishing. Everybody else was fishing. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Well, when are we going back in? I'm like, we just started. He was grumpy and it was weird. So when we get back in finally at 5 o'clock, and I've got a picture of it, we put all the fish up. He may have caught one or two, I don't know, but all the fish and all of us are standing there. We got a picture in front of, the boat we went on and all. And he's standing up there like he was fishing all day, like he's the fisherman. And I'm thinking to myself, this is totally different than the person I saw out there. And so we wound up going to a restaurant. We had the fish. They prepared it, had a meal. But it was funny. I don't hardly remember any details about that meal, other than the fact the food was good. And about that time, also I was starting to buy some. I wanted to buy a condo in Florida, so I wound up letting him buy into that deal, and we would be partners. I'd come in and we would fix up this condo. Maybe this condo deal might be a whole nother story in itself, because bottom line, when it's all said and done, um, in 3 years we resold it. I did all the work on it. I found it, did all the work on it, that sort of thing. And when it's all said and done, he cut me out of the whole deal. Made $180,000, or let's see, no, $140,000. And I actually put the money out of my pocket into it, and he cut me out of everything. And I'm like, that really started sending me into a deep depression. So around 01, 02, 03, I just kept collapsing, kept collapsing, kept collapsing. There was no support factor. And what I realized, I had to get out of real estate because I was really depressed and getting more and more. And then you just can't do real estate when you're depressed. It's just, you've got to be on your game. So bottom line, when it, just thinking back about this, got to laugh to keep from crying. So as far as the condo, you got that. But what happened was I had to start selling my property because I couldn't hardly work. I was just falling in deep and deeper into depression, and I didn't realize it. I didn't realize my brother was suffering in another state over this depression. My father was living in another state at the time. So I bought a house. I tried to make sure that it was big enough for the whole family to be able to come together. It was a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house, 4-car garage on an acre and a half. I could operate my office from it. And before it was all said and done, um, he got that house into his name and cut me out of the deal on that one too. So um, taking $250,000. I mean, it just you can't even think this stuff up. It's like you can't imagine that a father not only is not there for his child, but they will come in and slice your throat, stab you in the back, and then laugh at you. That's how I felt. He's done. From that point forward, I've walked away from it. He's still living in the house I bought, and I lived in 5 years before he got there. And I invited him to move in after my brother passed away. That's what it was, and put it in a land trust. And him and my brother deeded it out of my name and out of the trust and scammed me on it. But anyway, it is what it is. Cost me over $250,000, but you know what? It's money. People will sacrifice their soul for just chump change, and it amazes me when you have so much abilities. Bottom line is, I haven't talked to my father one-on-one in 10, 12 years. 12? Yeah, probably 10 or 12 years. And other than see him at a reunion a few weeks back, and he cowered. He ran out to the car and sat in the car. Everybody saying he was sitting in the car during the reunion. That's the kind of person he is. He's not a man. He's this kind of a man does not. So to sit there and say you're a man, a good man takes care and protects his children. He's not a predator on his children. And I think that's the hardest thing is to understand. I've gotten to a point now to where I've forgiven him for everything he's done. And actually I feel sorry. When you truly forgive somebody, you start feeling sorry because now they've set their whole eternal line up. They've taken on that karma. And that's another thing. When you forgive, you hand that karma back to them. You have no karma from that. All that pain and that anger you had towards them, when you forgive them, you're handing it back to them. And but bottom line is, I want to let you know he's still alive, still living in the house I bought, um, and cut me out of the will. My brother's going to inherit the house that they manipulated. It is what it is. But hopefully, this is a video just to let you know a little bit about the background. My father, not a man I ever wanted to be like, and everything I tried to stay away from. And when I was at my lowest, even after my brother died, when I was at my lowest, this is before I learned about the house, instead of helping me, encouraging me, he handed me a liquor bottle. Let that sink in for a minute. My brother drank himself to death, and a year later, I'm struggling, and he hands me a liquor bottle. That's all I have to say about that. So that's a little knowledge. That's If you want to ask me any questions, I'll be glad to answer it. But I think this is a longer video, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. I want to let you know how much I appreciate you guys and all the feedback, and have much gratitude for all the people signing up to follow. I want to make this a learning experience. This is not about being angry, venting, or anything. I'm over the whole thing. I'm happily married to the love of my life, and we've got a good life now. So I send blessings out, and hopefully I can be an encouragement to you guys. Somebody did say something about, say I just hit my mic, of getting a noise reduction on my mic, and I'm ordering one. So hopefully as I'm learning this, that higher quality will come through. And give me any recommendations. Like I said, I'm open to constructive criticism on how I can make better videos for you guys. I just want to let you know, from my heart to yours, I wish you only blessings and wish you a beautiful day. Bye bye now.